Hello and welcome back to Edge of the Box, a podcast by WhoScored.com in association with UltimateFan. If you want to find out more information about them, then check the link in the description and you'll get to find out a little bit more. I've heard it's a mix between Ultimate Team on FIFA and fantasy football, so I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that are interested in that. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by Jonathan Wilson and George Elek to preview the weekend's footballing action in the UK. We've got Man City v Chelsea, which is the FA Cup semi-final, and we're also having a look at a Premier League game as well. Chaps, how are we both? Jonathan, did a podcast with you for The Guardian a few weeks ago. I've listened to it loads of times and never noticed something before that I noticed during the Guardian podcast, is that you get called Wilson all the way through it. I obviously don't call you Wilson all the way through this one.
Well, I think at The Guardian's because you got Johnny Liu and Jonathan Verduba, who are both called Jonathan. So
if you're on
it's a help differentiate, yeah.
Help the listener. Okay. I mean, I won't call you Wilson. I don't feel I've...
Well, George is called George,
right.
So it's...
yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it? Yeah.
Dan, when you say you've listened to it loads of times, how many times have you listened to the episode that you were on?
Only skimmed through to listen to the bits I did to see if I was any good or not, and see if I'd get asked back.
I thought you were surprised. I didn't think you'd be that competent. I'll be honest.
George, are you okay?
I'm good, mate. Thank you.
Not ill this week or anything? Nothing going
No,
on?
no. I've had
a good run.
5 weeks of being healthy.
Wow.
And I know that because 5 weeks ago, almost to the day, I had a blood test to find out why I kept getting so ill, and that's obviously done the trick. So,
well, I mean, the season's ending, but if you can stay fit, you're going to be in for a good pre-season.
Yeah.
Come back stronger next season.
But just on the subject of, I know the listeners will be fascinated by this, but just on the subject of confusing numbers of people with the same name, and George being here. When I was, this is a few years ago, when I was going through all the old documents and things in my mum's house after she died, I found my great-grandparents' wedding certificate. And he was called George. I knew that. What I hadn't realised was his wife's maiden name was George, so she was called Amelia George. And her father was called George George. And the two witnesses were called George and Georgina.
That is amazing. And also, I'm called George. My wife is called Georgina.
Oh my God!
And her parents are called Andrew and Andrea. So,
wow! Look at this.
Go.
I mean, whether this makes the edit or not, I'm not sure. But I've had a lovely time listening to these stories.
Any Danielas in your life?
No, Daniela. Never been a Daniela.
Just you wait.
Nothing like that. I hope not, George. No time, no more time for stuff like that. Right then, let's have a look at Manchester City against Chelsea, the FA Cup semi-final. And Jonathan, the big breaking news before we come on this podcast, because technically it was last night. Now we've gone into the podcast this morning. Manchester City are out of the Champions League, humbled by Real Madrid on penalties. The double treble is over. They can still do a double this season, but it'd be a blow the way they went out, because really Real Madrid, I thought Jose Mourinho took charge of Real Madrid again at certain points during the game. They were so deep, but Man City will be hurt by that defeat.
Yeah, they will be. It was slightly, if you look at the tie as a whole, if you look over 2 legs, I think it was actually very typical of City this season that there were moments when they looked absolutely at their best, as good as they were in the spring last season, which I think is the best we've seen them. But then there were also moments when, particularly in the first half of the first leg, when they looked incredibly vulnerable to balls played over the top, balls played behind them. And also times when they just look a little bit flat, when they have all the ball and just don't quite create enough. I mean, they created enough last night to win that game, but in some ways a little bit unfortunate not to win it. You can almost say it's credit how good they are that Real Madrid felt compelled to play in a very un-Real Madrid way. But those two faults of not quite having the cutting edge we've seen before, and Haaland, I think, absolutely is now central to that issue, and that vulnerability to balls played in behind them. Because if you think even in the second half, when Real Madrid were sitting steady, there were a couple of times when they got breaks. There was that great challenge by Walker on Vinicius, which led to Vinicius going off. That he just ran too fast and he blew up. There is a problem there, and it's somehow the balance they had last season isn't quite right.
No, I thought they were quite. It doesn't sound harsh. One-dimensional last night, George. And I get that Real Madrid were defending with everyone behind the ball, defending very, very, very deep, and then Man City were looking susceptible on the break. But it felt like a bit like until Haaland went off, get the ball out wide, just swinging across and see what happens. It didn't feel like there's many patterns of play, but I understand that it's probably difficult in those circumstances.
I think it's really tough when you're 1-0 down against a side like Real Madrid, who, for all of their attacking threat, like they're always a side under Ancelotti who are pretty happy out of possession as well. They don't press particularly aggressively. We saw that in the away leg as well, where City enjoy loads of the ball and Madrid kind of happy to let them have it. And it is, trying to break down a low block in a knockout game where you've only got a finite amount of time to do it is difficult. Having said that, they created loads. Like, this was, in terms of like the actual balance of play, there wasn't a massive difference between this and the game where they thrashed them last season in terms of actual chance creation, XG, shots, and the rest of it. It was just the case that Lunin had an unbelievable game in the Real Madrid goal. And
I think he did. I don't remember him making any save where I thought
he made some big saves. There was the one that he tipped over the bar from De Bruyne, which whether or not was going in, but that was a good save. I thought he had a good game, and then obviously the penalties as well. Although there's a very good video going around social media this morning of Rudiger on the halfway line, basically telling him where to go for Kovacic's penalty, because obviously them being very good mates and teammates at Chelsea, and he goes that way and saves it. It's a classic case of outcome bias, possibly having a big say in this, where I thought City probably did enough on the day to get through and probably to win the game 2-1. Like, they were in the ascendancy at 1-1. They had chances in the last 15 minutes to win it as well. But we know this is what Real Madrid do, and the one moment of absolute quality in the game was Jude Bellingham plucking the ball out of the air and shifting it right in order to create the goal for the pre-assist for the goal that Real Madrid scored. And that is what they always do in the Champions League. Dan, you and I have had a lot of chats in the past about Ancelotti in the Champions League. Well, but it's the same again, where I watched yesterday's game. I don't think you can come away from it being like that as a tactical masterclass from Ancelotti, but moments of quality and a kind of reliance on the opposition being fairly wasteful in front of goal is what has won so many Champions Leagues in the last 3 or 4 years. So, or Champions League games, maybe I should say. But it's frustrating for City, of course. Guardiola is a manager who doesn't have a particularly good record in the competition, if you take out last season. And last night was another episode of not being able to get over the line in a game that they should have won.
You mentioned something being different, Jonathan. The only real thing I can put my finger on that's different from Man City of last season to this season, just in terms of personnel. Because the defence pretty much stays the same, but they might change one player. Like, I thought it was odd that Stones didn't play last night, unless there was a fitness issue I didn't know about. But the main difference for me is Gundogan.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the two big things. So Gundogan, I think his sort of range of abilities, his capacity just to balance everything off, because he could push forward. He did score late goals. He did make late runs into the box, but also just keeping the ball moving, that lubrication. He could sit in. He could become a second pivot if he needed him to. I think they do miss a player. They've got players who can replicate each one of those three things, but I just don't think they have somebody who can do all three. I assume it's an injury issue with Stones. Maybe there's a sense his form isn't quite back to what it was, but I think actually Akanji played pretty well last night. I think it's almost as well as I've seen him play in that role of stepping out from the back. But he's not as good at it as Stones was in the second half of last season. I think the third factor is Haaland, who's one of the things he gave City last season. I think we always knew, we always expected, and we saw it particularly the first half of last season. There's a tension there between how he wants to play and the classic Guardiola way of playing. That he doesn't drop off. He doesn't become an extra midfielder. He doesn't get involved having 60, 70, 80 touches in a game. He has 15, 20 touches in a game. But he gives them that option to go over the top early, to play more direct. And in theory, he gives them the option that when an opposing defence is sitting deep, he can win headers because he's 6'5". He hasn't scored a header since October. Since Manchester Derby in October was the last time he scored a header. Now I know he hit the bar last night, and that with 3 inches from that's being changed. But for whatever reason, he's not scoring headers anymore. And opponents have worked out that if you sit deep, you negate his pace to an extent. And if he's not scoring headers, you can afford to sit deep against him. And City aren't building up that the carousel that Alex Ferguson used to talk about when he played Barcelona. They're not playing with the ball's not moving quite that pace. They don't have quite the same number of different angles. They don't have the centre forward dropping off and therefore creating space for others to move into. And I think you saw the game where they beat Villa, which is probably their best performance of this year, was when Haaland didn't play and Alvarez played there, and he did drop off, and it was a bit more like old City. Now maybe there's something there that we just feel more comfortable seeing City play like that. But it almost felt that game, the way they found their rhythm at times, that there was almost a relief that, oh God, we can go back to the thing we used to do that used to be really effective. Now with Haaland, they won the treble, and I think the tension between those two things proved creative last season. But I always think one of the interesting things with creative tension is I always think it's quite short term. And I think you can see, I'm not going to go into a huge lecture about this in football history, but look at the Ajax that won the European Cup in 72 and 73, where they'd slightly moved on from the Mikel's approach to the Kovac approach. And there was a tension there, but they probably produced their best football then, and then it falls away. Look at Liverpool under Dalglish. 87-8 is probably the best football they played in all that 15, 20-year period when they were dominant. But that's the beginning of a decline. And I just wonder if that's what we're seeing with City, that last season was the peak. That tension proved very creative last season. But maybe it creates pressures which begin to erode. Now, look, it's City. They're incredibly rich. They've got the best coach in the world, possibly the best coach ever. It may be that they win the league with 100 points again next season. That's also entirely possible. But with my football historian's hat on, I just wonder if we're seeing that pattern repeating.
Well, you talk of Pep, George. I thought it was an interesting tactic to take two of your best penalty takers off in extra time in Haaland and De Bruyne.
He's said in his post match that both of them asked him to come off, which I guess is a.
I don't think he's lying, to be fair.
No, I mean with De Bruyne, he's a player that doesn't regularly play 90 minutes back-to-back anyway, who's had recent injury issues, and he was ill last week. So I was pretty surprised that he was still on the pitch going into extra time, let alone being there for the penalties. And again, with Haaland not playing particularly well, pretty short confidence, and again, physically someone who's had injury issues in the past, albeit not too bad recently. So I'm not overly surprised they weren't still there. Having said that, and City didn't offer much in extra time, I thought that was probably when they were at their poorest and when Madrid looked like they might go and actually win the game. So yeah, I mean, the penalties weren't great. Feel for Bernardo Silva. Like, as a non-footballer, whenever I see players hit it down the middle, I always think it's crazy that it's generally the best place to hit a penalty, that we never really see what happened yesterday with the goalkeeper just standing still and catching the ball. But, it happened at the worst time for him, and a pretty poor penalty from Kovacic as well. So they'll be frustrated now, but I think it probably wasn't really realistic to expect both of them to play 120 minutes.
Jonathan Menn, you've been banging the same drum about Jack Grealish all season. I had an argument with an idiot on Twitter last night who was insisting to me that Doku is the better player, and that was proved by City scoring as soon as he came on, pretty much. But again, Grealish started the big game. I thought he was their best player up until the point he went off. Everything went through him, but he got a couple of assists at the Bernabeu last week. He's been popping up with assists in the Premier League as well. There's absolutely no doubt that when Pep's picking his strongest 11 for a game, he picks Jack Grealish.
Better player, I'm uneasy with.
Yeah.
I think better player for that system and what Guardiola wants to do. Because I think he doesn't. We know he doesn't. The stats show he gives the ball away about half as often as Doku. That his selection of when to dribble, when to take his player on, I think is much better. It's just been I think this season he's had a lot of injuries. I think Guardiola wasn't particularly impressed by the way he celebrated the treble last season. I think there's been a little bit of making a point to him. But you're right, that every time they've come into a big game the last sort of couple of months since he's got fit again, it's Grealish who's played. And Doku, to be honest, hasn't really been... I think if you look at the biggest games... I think he only started one game in the knockouts of the Champions League or against either Arsenal or Liverpool. So Guardiola, I think, sees Doku at the moment maybe as a bit of a project that he'll like Grealish. He'll amend his game. He'll make him evolve. But he's to be used against teams who aren't really going to threaten City. Teams are going to sit deep against City, where his dribbling ability, his capacity to create space by dribbling, outweighs the danger of him losing the ball or the regularity with which he loses the ball. But I don't think Guardiola trusts Doku. And I think you're right. I think Grealish last month has looked really good again, to the point where and I know we don't want to get into this debate now, I realise, but I've now changed my mind about what England should do in the summer. I've gone full handbrake off now, and I think Bellingham should play deep, play Foden centrally behind Kane, Grealish on the left, Saka on the right. And that's not ideal, but I think that's... Anyway, he's been good enough to make
It's not what will happen either.
No, but it's... Well, I will now criticise for Southgate for not doing it, whereas I wouldn't have before. But that's... And I wouldn't do that if Calvin Phillips were in form, if Jordan Henderson were 5 years younger and playing at a high level. If it were a viable holding midfielder to release Declan Rice. That's not what I do. But I think Grealish has been good enough to justify bringing him in there, and then you play Foden in his preferred place, and Bellingham has to play a bit deeper, but he did it at the World Cup, was very good at it, and get on with his son, and in next tournament you'll probably be playing where you want to play. Will be what I do. Anyway, Grealish is playing well. He's a different type of player to Doku, and I think he's more suited to big games at the moment.
Yeah, and if he's 100% in the England squad, in my opinion. I presume you both share that opinion now.
Well, the Doku will be in the Belgium squad.
No, Grealish, sorry.
Grealish, okay, sorry, yeah.
I presume Doku will be in the Belgium squad as well. We can cover all squads here. We can go through and just assume that certain players will be in certain squads.
Belgium can't have any be better on the left, can they? I can't think of anybody.
No, I still struggle not to go to the old team. Or the
Eden
team
Hazard's retired.
17 consecutive tournaments. Dries Mertens.
Dries
on the list.
yeah.
Is he still around? Hazard, Eden Hazard, Torgan Hazard. All these players. They're still playing for Belgium. I'm not sure.
They've still got Vertonghen and Alderweireld playing centre back, haven't they? So
Vertonghen, I think he does still play.
He does, yeah, he does.
I'm not sure Alderweireld does. But
no, he doesn't.
Is Vermaelen still there? Is he still knocking about the Belgium squad? I think he might be.
Witzel's been playing in centre midfield for about 25 years, hasn't he?
About 5 players, isn't he?
Jan Keulemans, Jean-Marie Pfaff, Georges Grun.
No, you've gone back too far.
Just naming players in the 80s.
You've gone too far.
Frankie van der Elst.
Boyata must be there. Let's talk a little bit about Manchester City's opposition then this weekend. It's Chelsea, Cup specialists in a way this season, George. Someone who seems to be a specialist at scoring goals and just looking very good at football is Cole Palmer. He's actually down as the best rated new signing for WhoScored of signings that have been made this season. All these players actually were bought in the summer. Cole Palmer sits top with 7.39. Do you want to have a stab at number 2 and number 3?
McAllister? Rice, I
was going to say, yeah.
Rice is number 3. Who is this? McAllister's in there, but he is number 6.
Van der Ven?
Jonathan, you said Mickey Van der Ven. He's not in the top 10.
You're joking.
And that rhymed, which is sumptuous. Yeah. We've just been talking about number 2 because it is Jeremy Docker.
Yeah.
Okay. 7.35.
Oh, Onana. Must be up there. He's always up there.
He's actually not in the top 10, which makes no sense.
Well, that's because what we spoke about last week. Keepers and defenders, their high ratings are lower than attackers and strikers.
That's true, because you would expect Van der Ven to be in there, probably.
The Championship manager model.
And also, if you just ask me who I think the best signings have been, I don't know if you count him because obviously he was signed and loaned out, but Destiny Udogie I think has been really good this season.
Not in there.
But yeah, because Ross Barkley has had a way better season. Is he? Oh, okay, fair play.
He's in the top 10. 7th.
Right.
Shall I read the top 10?
Yeah, go on.
I'll read it for you. We've got Cole Palmer, who is top, Doku, number 2, Declan Rice, 3, Maddison, 4, Kudus, 5, Alexis McAllister, 6, Ross Barkley comes in at 7th, James Ward-Prowse is number 8, Nicholas Jackson is number 9, and Kai Havertz is number 10. So they're the best rated new signings according to WhoScored. So let's talk about one of those then, George. Cole Palmer. Absolutely superb. I know a lot of his goals turn out to be penalties, but just the eye test alone, Cole Palmer is a wonderful footballer. But I still think he might not go to the Euros.
It has to go. Like if
playing the last
round
of but at all, which tells me he's not going.
Yeah, but he's scored back-to-back home hat tricks since then. Like you can't, he scored 7 goals in 2 home games.
And Chelsea are rubbish.
Yeah, I think if he doesn't go and England don't win the Euros, it'll be the thing that is forever held over Southgate. Forever. It'll be like, do you remember when he didn't take Cole Palmer to the Euros? When he
but let's think about the squad, right? So 23-man squad. Yeah, I mean, you kind of earned it now. But yeah.
Is that the spoiler? Is that your answer? Because that's my answer as well.
Yeah. 23-man squad. 3 of them are keepers. So you got 20 players for 10 positions. So that band of creative midfielders, you've got 6 spaces. So we've already said Grealish is going, Foden's going, Bellingham's going, Saka's going. So that leaves 2. I haven't missed anybody obvious, have I? So you're saying Maddison doesn't go, and I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
Cole Palmer goes.
How many strikers have you got in this?
Well, I would actually take 3. I'm not sure whether they take 2 or 3, but I also think you can fudge it slightly because Bellingham could play deeper.
Yeah.
And equally, you could play John Stones at the back of midfield if you really have to. So I'm happy to take 3 strikers and 7 of those creators.
I think Kane, Watkins, and Palmer, because I know he's not a striker, but he has played as a striker and he's a goal scorer. I think you can basically fudge him in as like the third striker / 10, basically.
And not Tony, even though Tony played pretty well against Belgium.
Possibly. I mean, that's there are 2 players there in Maddison and Tony who are kind of grade in. That I would say I would take him ahead of both of those. Albeit, I almost think you should take Tony just for penalties anyway.
I had to do this a few weeks ago. Actually, I had to pick what I thought. I had to enter Gareth Southgate's mind and pick what I thought the 23 would be if everyone was fit. So I did it. Do you want to see what I went with? This is me being Gareth Southgate. This isn't what I would do.
Go on.
At the time, this is what I did, and I think I agree with you that the space is he goes instead of Maddison. So you've got Pickford, Ramsdale, and then a third keeper because I put Johnston at the time because he was fit and he's not fit now. Walker, Trippier, Trent, Stones, Maguire, Gahey, Colwill, Shaw. But if Gahey's not fit, obviously it will be someone else.
Right, Shaw's not going to be fit, is he? I think.
No, probably be Chilwell, which scares me, frankly, by what I saw in the last round of international fixtures. Rice, Mainu, Henderson, Bellingham, Gallagher, and then Saka, Foden, Grealish, Rashford. At the time, I put Maddison and then Kane and Watkins. So looking at that, to me, the only space really there is the Maddison space for Palmer.
And I think we'd be like on current form. I mean, we had this conversation last week, and it went out on social already. So I feel bad for the guys who'SCored putting this out. But like, you can't take Maddison over Palmer now, like right now. Like, there's in terms of what they're both offering, in terms of where they are in their game right now and their form. Palmer is infinitely better right now. I'm not saying he is a better footballer. Like, I'm a huge Maddison fan, but you have to go on what's happening at the moment. Like I think that the range of skill that Palmer showed within those 4 goals, like ignore the penalty, but for the first one,
he argue to guard him getting a perfect hat trick. That was sky high.
But he made Branthwaite, who's been a standout performer, not just for Everton this season, but in the Premier League, look like a fool. You know, he sat him down, he nutmegged him, and he went round him for the first, and then played the 1-2 with a brilliant effort to finish into the far corner. The second one is just a classic kind of goal scorer's instinct, being there to follow up for the rebound and nodding it home. And then the third, you know, not only the disguised press, you know, basically Pickford thinking he had an easy ball and Palmer reading it and intercepting it, and then the composure and the skill to lob him from 40 odd yards, like with his right foot. You know, it was, in terms of what you're looking for from a player in that role, he has it all. And I think would be, and again, a proven clinical penalty taker, which you have a feeling might play a part in the summer.
Might be worth taking Maddison due to his red card immunity trait that he seems to have picked up in recent weeks. Where he just doesn't. He seems to be able to do anything on a football pitch and not be sent off. That might be useful in the tournament, Jonathan, when we want to kick someone when we're on the floor. Or
well, if he has that, why even have him in the squad? Just have him running out the crowd.
True. That's true. Yeah, he's almost invisible at this point, isn't he?
Your squad is not that far from what mine would be. I'd be very tempted to take Tony over Rashford. I think have those 3 centre forwards just because it's a position that's difficult to fudge. I think other positions, you play Trent Alexander-Arnold at the back of midfield if you needed to, and it might not be perfect, but it would be fine. Whereas if, say, Kane gets injured, Watkins comes in, and he does a hammy in the first 20 minutes, and suddenly you say, could Cole Palmer fill in there? Could Foden play as a false 9? I'd rather have Tony there to bring on. So I think I'd go with 3 centre forwards, and Rashford's form at the minute, I think, is not sufficient to justify being in there. I think Anthony Gordon's pretty unlucky to miss out as well. But
I just think Grealish coming back will. Form, I think Gordon probably would have gone.
Yeah, and Gordon can, like Cole Palmer, he can play centre forward as well. That's the other slight thing in his favour.
We should say Gordon probably should be going over Rashford, in all honesty.
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about Chelsea then, Jonathan. Absolute, carnage on Monday night. So much going on. I won't talk about the penalty incident, but that was absolutely ridiculous. We've got Nicholas Jackson is in the goals. I think he's equalled Drogba's first season Premier League record, or he's not far off equaling that now. Is he someone who you think has improved as the season gone on?
I know. I do. I actually think he's played pretty well for quite a while now. I think his finishing is still off, and I think that's, if he's going to be a really, really elite player, he's got to develop that coldness in front of the goal. But I think his movement is really good. I think his hold-up play is really good. I think his link play is really good. And I think that's been true for quite a while. I'm trying to think which game it was I was at where I hadn't seen Chelsea for a couple of months live, and I suddenly realised, Nicholas Jackson's in the middle of everything going forward. He's really good at holding the ball up because he's not actually that tall. Maybe he just has a slightly hunched stance, but he's not like 6'4". I think he's probably 5'10", 5'11", something like that. But he holds the ball up really well. He's really quick. I think there's a lot of promise there. And I think this is sort of a classic issue of what Chelsea have done, that he's brought in having played, I think, 16 league games in his career, and suddenly, you're the number 9 for Chelsea. You can't do that to a kid. You've got to integrate them slowly. You've got to let them have their periods out of form or when confidence is low, and you've got to be able to take them out of the firing line. It didn't happen to him, but he seems to have come through that. I think his link up with Palmer is really good. I think the other thing that maybe happened on Monday, and all this has to be caveated by just how bad Everton were, but having the two wide forwards actually playing really wide, Mudryk and Madueke, rather than in that sort of inside forward position, that I think created space for Palmer. But I'm not sure you'd always want to do that, because I think stretching the pitch like that against better opponents can create defensive issues. But I think that really worked. I think I'm not entirely convinced by Madueke yet, but I think that's and Mudryk clearly has flaws as well, but I think he's got better as the season's gone on. And again, somebody who came in was expected to be a first choice, 80 odd million quid, and he'd played 30 games in Ukraine, not even all of them for Shakhtar. So some of them when he was out on loan. So ludicrous pressure to place on him, and he's had to really sort of learn on the hoof. But I think the signs, both he and Jackson, are starting to come good. So I've been a fan of Jackson for a while. I think he will be good.
I have to reevaluate my opinion if my hero and mentor Jonathan Wilson is
I've been saying it all season, Dan. You ignore me.
But you're not my hero and mentor, George.
Well, should be.
I mean, honestly, you can have the role. I'm done.
Yeah, Jonathan's. Anyone ever watch Scrubs? Jonathan's like Dr. Cox, and I'm just vying for his. I wasn't expecting you to have watched Scrubs, to be honest. When I bought that.
Who does that make me?
More likely.
Who does that make me? My Turk?
Nah.
What?
Who's the blonde lass? What's she called?
Elliot.
That's not my surname. I'll be her.
Yeah, you could be Elliot. Yeah.
So does that mean you kind of love me?
Yeah, I do love you. I do love you, George. You've got the blonde hair. You kind of got the green scrubs on in this
yeah, that's true
as well. Yeah, we'll go with you for.
But that's their surgeon scrubs, aren't they? So that would make me Turk. So.
No, you're not.
Gone too deep.
You can't. I don't think you can be. I don't think you can be the Rollo's Dr. Kelsa overseeing the podcast today. Right then, let's do a combined 11 for this one. It is an FA Cup centric combined 11. You have to have made 3 appearances in the FA Cup to make this 11. You got Petrovic in goal, Gusto, Diaz, Thiago Silva, and Gvardiol as the defence. Got Kovacic, Fernandes, and De Bruyne as the midfield, and then Bernardo Silva, Nicholas Jackson, and Phil Foden as the front 3. Nice 11. I guess Chelsea have. If we did a Premier League 11, I imagine it would be more City players would be in it, but because Chelsea have done well in the Cups this season, it's kind of even. 2, 3, 4, 5 Chelsea players in this 11. Is this just finally on Chelsea? I can't remember who did I ask the last question to. Terrible presenting.
Who knows?
No one cares. Okay, I'll just throw it up in the air, and either of you can take it. Then, is this how important is this for Chelsea, for Pochettino to win this cup this season?
I think if they were to win it would be very important, but I don't think there's a massive amount of pressure on them to do so. I don't think Chelsea fans are going into this Saturday's game expecting to get anything out of it. So in that sense, it feels like a bit of a free hit. Like I don't know if you guys feel the same, but from my understanding, it feels like Pochettino is under some pressure from the fan base Doesn't really feel like he's under much
little.
pressure internally at all. Like I'd be amazed if anything could happen between now and the end of the season that would mean that Pochettino would lose his job. So in that sense, I don't think too much pressure.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
don't think anyone could have done any better than him this season. I think it's a really hard team to manage.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting after the penalty nonsense on Monday. I know he ended up getting in a row about how much the press conference had been about the penalty incident, but at least at first, he was quite happy to talk it up. You know, he could easily have said, "Oh, look, I want my players to be hungry to score goals. It's obviously not ideal. I'll just explain to them, look, Cole Palmer is the penalty taker. He'll take him. That's it. Finished." He didn't. He allowed the conversation to go on. I think it suits his purposes for people to realise just what a difficult bunch of egos.
It's a very valid point.
Yeah, and I think Chelsea have a chance in this game because if you think of the 2 league games, they've repeatedly got in behind City. They've caused loads of problems. You know, the crazy 4-4 game at Stamford Bridge, but they could easily have won at the Etihad. That there was a couple of chances. Sterling and Jackson kept on getting in behind them. There's one really good save from Ederson. I think there's one quite bad miss as well. And that was how they got their goal in that game. So, I look, City are favourites, obviously, but I don't think it's beyond the bounds of possibility that Chelsea could beat a City who, having been cruising last weekend, sort of thought, oh yeah, there's another treble on, and now maybe slightly winded.
If you're Pep Guardiola, are you not pretty annoyed that this isn't the Sunday semi? Like they've had to play a Champions League quarter-final on Wednesday night, over 120 minutes. There are 2 semi-finals on Saturday and Sunday, and they've got to come back and play on the Saturday. It feels like
the schedule is a mess.
Normally I wouldn't have I wouldn't have much sympathy. But when you've got a United Coventry game 24 hours later, you just wonder why they didn't flip them.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. That's reasonable. I mean, it does mean they get an extra day's break. Do they play Brighton next week? I think Chelsea. City.
Thursday.
Yes,
as we know, I guess conversations.
There's a Thursday. Oh yeah, of course,
Thursday. Yeah, big game. You wouldn't be able to do a podcast before that game was on. Absolutely no chance, would you?
That's the title showdown, isn't it? Brighton Man City.
In George Alex's world, what he said about being my hero and mentor earlier. These are the reasons. Not George. Ali Maxwell, though. What a guy.
What a guy. I agree.
Right then, let's do predictions for this one then. Chelsea, Manchester City, FA Cup semi-final. George, this doesn't count towards anything, by the way, but just do a prediction for fun.
I think that it might be a draw. I'm going to go 2-2 and City to progress, either on extra time penalties.
Jonathan?
2-0 to City.
2-0 to City. I was going to go 2-0 to City, but I feel like in this kind of no frills prediction, I should do something different here. I'll go 2-1 to Manchester City. Then Cole Palmer on the score sheet for Chelsea, but they still end up losing the game. And a prediction for United Coventry again for fun. George, you predicted them to get through the quarters. You're going for it again?
I think Coventry have got a massive chance on Sunday.
I hope so.
I'm going to the game as well, and I cannot wait.
I'd love to go to that game.
Yeah. I'm going to say 2-1 Cov. Like, they're going to go for it, and they're going to. They if United do get through, I'm pretty confident it won't be easy, and Coventry will have a lot of opportunities to get something out of the game.
Jonathan?
I do like the narrative of Mark Robbins keeps one manager in the job and he ends up finishing another manager. Yeah. But I'm going United to win 2-0.
I'm going to go for a shit house, for want of a better term. Shit house, Manchester United 2-1 win.
Villaboy Callum O'Hare to perform on the big stage, although he's not really starting games at the moment.
He's been sub, hasn't he? I think Coventry were really, really good against Wolves. It looked like they were going to lose that game at one point, and they plucked it from nowhere and then ended up winning. I just think they'll be the better team. They'll obviously have more shots than Manchester United, because that's what happens in Manchester United games. But they'll somehow end up losing, probably because Bruno Fernandes flukes a winner.
Keep an eye on Ben Sheaf, because he will be a player who in the next couple of years will be a very good Premier League player, and probably a England squad conversation. He's
been in the Premier League before. Did he come through Premier League academy, Ben Sheaf?
Came through Arsenal.
I thought
he's very, very good.
Yeah, when he's got the ball as well, when he does something, because the fans go, Sheaf. I still have nightmares about the 2000 and I can't remember 2017 or 2008. I think it's 2018 playoff final when Villa lost to Fulham And all I heard all day was Ream.
That was the game where
won everything.
I think Grealish set the record for the most amount of times being fouled in a game. I think it was like 12.
Yeah, and again, there was a player, Fredericks, that had red card immunity that day as well, didn't he? In the playoff final. Let's talk about predictions then. Unfortunately, the league leader has changed yet again. Jonathan and Sam go top with 202 after getting a massive. Well, it's not massive at all. After getting 6 points last week.
Difficult week last week.
Yeah, unfortunately, I only got 3 points, and George only got 3 points as well. So that leaves me on 200, 2 points behind, and George still away on 172. Another reason why he's not my hero and mentor, the predictions league here. So yeah, I mean, hopefully the league will change hands again. It is. There's no doubt, Jonathan. This is an exciting title race up there with the Premier League one, really.
Oh, it's twists and turns. It's a privilege to be part of it. It's nerve wracking, but when it comes to the end of my career, look back. These will be the moments I remember.
I don't know what else left to say. I haven't got anything clever to say off the back of what you said. But yeah, big predictions this week. So let's do them then. Sheffield United, Burnley, Jonathan.
1-1.
1-1. I get the feeling George might not quite be ready, so I'll do mine next. I don't know why I've done this.
Ready.
I've gone for Sheffield United 2, Burnley 1, but I did pull out a big
No.
Sheffield prediction the other week. Is that what you've done?
Yeah.
Luton, Brentford, George.
2-0 Luton.
2-2 here, Jonathan.
1-1.
Wolves v Arsenal, Jonathan.
2-0 to Arsenal.
2-1 to Arsenal here, George.
2-0 Arsenal.
2-0 to Arsenal. Everton, Forest, George.
1-1.
1-0 to Everton.
I've gone 2-1 to Forest.
All three results.
Yep, interesting. That could be a crucial game in the predictions league this weekend. It'll be great when none of those results come true and it's something completely different. Palace v West Ham. I've gone for 2-0 to Crystal Palace, Jonathan.
1-0 to Palace.
1-0 to Palace, George.
1-1.
And then Villa v Bournemouth, please, Jonathan.
2-1 to Villa.
2-1 to Villa, George.
2-1 Villa.
2-1 to Villa. I predicted Villa to keep a clean sheet, although they did keep one at the Emirates last week. I've gone for 2-0 to Aston Villa. Right, the only other Premier League game that we've not mentioned there is Fulham against Liverpool. George, what's gone on in the last few weeks for Liverpool? The script's a bit hyperbolic, in my opinion, here. Where has it all gone wrong for Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp? They're still in the title race. They've won a trophy. It's not all is not lost. It's just, people are talking like the title race is over. I think we saw last night with Manchester City that not necessarily everything is just going to go their way and they're going to win every week.
Well, I think that is, always the case when people talk about football. Is people don't expect surprise results to happen. Especially this time of the season, people seem to look at fixtures and say, "Well, they're not going to drop another point," and that's just not how it really works. There's no denying it's been a really poor run of games for Liverpool in terms of what they've taken out of them. But if you look at kind of the numbers and the stats, it paints a very different picture, especially in the Premier League. They had the 2-2 draw against Manchester United. They had 28 shots to United's 9. The XG was 3.67 to 0.7. You've got the Palace game last weekend. They had 21 shots to Palace's 8. They had 4 big chances. Their expected goals was 2.81 and they failed to score. And then even against Atalanta, they were beaten 3-0. I mean, defensively, they were a bit of a shambles and they conceded 3.22 expected goals, but they themselves had 2.6 and they failed to get on the score sheet. So what it kind of boils down to is just a rotten patch of finishing.
Finishing was horrendous against Palace.
Exactly. In a clustered area, which has really cost them. So I don't think there's loads wrong with the performances, albeit defensively they have looked very poor. But it wouldn't be a big shock to me. I don't think we're looking at this suddenly seeing. I mean, I would say that Arsenal's performances have probably been more concerning, where they seem to have dropped massively in terms of their attacking output and their ability to create chances.
In fairness to Arsenal, they've had to play 2 of the best teams
in the world
over the last week.
Yeah,
so
true.
It's tough for them. It's a different ball game there.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be shocked if Liverpool bounce back from those results pretty soon and possibly here.
No, they've got the Europa League game tonight as well. We're obviously recording Thursday morning. I don't think they'll get it back, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility because they have done that kind of thing before, albeit at Anfield. Do you think? I mean, what's your thoughts on Liverpool in the title race here, Jonathan? Still very much in it, or do you think it's probably gone now?
I mean, they are in it.
2 points, isn't it? Is it 2 points?
2 points.
I've got the lead table in front of me.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say against them is, okay, two things I'd say against them. They've gone behind 21 times. They've conceded the first goal in the game 21 times this season. That's just too many. You can't keep doing that. And I think even looking back, even before the League Cup final, there's been this sort of element of chaos to the way things have been going. It's been this very highly emotional way of playing. So the game where they beat Luton, the League Cup final, even beating Sheffield United, it took that brilliant McAllister goal. They've made hard work. Brighton as well. And it's partly because of going behind, or it's Sheffield United conceding. I mean, Sheffield United had a really good chance in the first minute of that game, so they could have gone behind, but conceding an equaliser from nowhere. So it's not just the finishing. The finishing is obviously the thing that catches the eye and probably has been the biggest factor, but they do suddenly have a capacity to concede goals from nowhere. And partly has to do with injuries, partly to do with the squad, I think, not being ready yet. I think it's this. If you've been plotting it out, this would have looked like a transitional season. And obviously, because of Klopp leaving, because of the way things have gone, I think people may be expecting a little bit too much from that squad. I think there's issues with Nunez and Diaz that they're a little bit. To have two of them who are sort of so wild, I think one could be quite useful. It sort of unsettles opponents. That sense of unpredictable can be very useful. To have two of them can mean that they'd be very wasteful in the game. Salah's form has been awful since he came back from injury. And I think it's a little bit like Arsenal last season when they had the win at Villa, when they beat Bournemouth at home with a last-minute goal. That you can do that for so long, but you can't keep doing that. And Liverpool, by missing chances, by conceding the first goal, have put themselves in that position too often. And ultimately, it all becomes overwhelming. And I think that was, especially that Atlanta game last week, they just looked so weary the second half. And I think it's a combination of mental fatigue, physical fatigue, emotional fatigue. And so, yeah, it is a load of missed chances, but also why are they missing chances? And partly it's because maybe the players aren't quite at the very elite level, or Salah's not back at where he was, but partly I think it's because of that emotional exhaustion, and that if the tireder you are, whether that's physical, emotional, or mental, the harder it is to make the right decision, or to execute that decision when you've made it. So I think what we're seeing is just sort of a culmination of a season that has been riding this emotional pitch, and I just think that's incredibly hard to sustain.
Yeah, I'm conceding first, George. I think there's some caveats there in the fact that, they've had a lot of youngsters in the back line. They've probably very rarely from game to game played the same back four. The goalkeeper's changed in recent weeks as well. Do you think that kind of adds to the jumbled nature and adds to them? Perhaps that's a reason why they concede first? Possibly,
yeah. I mean, it's such a finite, small amount of games in order to draw those kind of conclusions. I mean, I guess as the bad results keep coming, maybe they're going into games a little bit.
I think Jonathan said, did you say 21 times that they?
21, yeah.
Is it? Yeah, I mean,
isn't it?
It is a lot. Yeah, no, it is a lot. So yeah, but there's possibly something in that. That there can be multiple reasons why teams don't start games particularly well, and that's it's a huge difficulty to come back and do that. But as we say, they're still going behind in games and creating plenty enough to at least get themselves back into it. Just at this moment in time, they're struggling to put the ball in the back of their net because of, as Jonathan says, Salah is quite clearly Liverpool's most important player, and when he's fit and firing, they are an unstoppable force from an attacking sense. But he's just not that right now, and that stunts their attacking options.
Yeah, going to talk a little bit about Fulham here, Jonathan. Anthony Robinson is what we've been tasked with, or who we've been tasked with talking about. He's actually rated as the second best left back in the Premier League this season, of Premier League left backs that have made 15 or more appearances. The only left back that's ahead of him is Andy Robertson. This is a wrong tongue twister trying to get through. Andy Robertson and Anthony Robinson at the same time. Apparently, he's been linked with Liverpool in the past as well. How good has he been for Fulham? And I hate doing this. Can he go on and play for a team that competes in Europe, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw. I think did Fulham play United the last game before the World Cup, and I was at that game, and that was the first time I really sort of paid attention to him. His link up with Willian that day was excellent. I think he's a really high class player. I don't know. It's difficult. Is he good enough to play for a City or Liverpool and Arsenal? Maybe. But does he really want to leave Fulham at the moment, where he's playing so well, where he's comfortable, where things seem to be moving well, and he's got a great relationship on that side with Willian. So, yeah, a hugely talented player. Who's the player ranked? Oh, yeah, Andy Robertson. You said was ranked higher than yeah. I mean, Andy Robertson clearly is a brilliant left back, so you can't gainsay that. But no, I think he impressed me last season. I think he's kicked on a bit. You know, he's defensively pretty good, but he gets forward as well. I think exactly what you want in a modern fullback.
I think I remember when they signed something for $1 million from Wigan. I remember thinking at the time that was a good pickup. They'd certainly get more than $1 million for him now, George.
Yeah, no, they definitely would. He was linked to, he very nearly went to, was it Juventus on deadline day, and it fell through. No, AC Milan. He nearly went to AC Milan for $13 million. $13 million it says here. Just strange. In January 2020. But the deal fell through because he had a heart rhythm irregularity, which he didn't go, and then he went to Fulham a couple of months later for an absolute fraction of that. I think there was at a time where Wigan had some serious financial issues and had to basically sell players to stay afloat. So, I actually kind of think he'd be perfectly suited to play for a bigger club, in inverted commas, where that flying fullback role is very much about your athleticism and your ability to overlap, and it's all the things that he's very good at. And I think that's why in the Championship, especially when he was playing for a side that dominated possession, he was so good. So I'm a big fan, and it'll be interesting to see if he does get another move from Fulham.
Fulham have been good against the big teams at home, haven't they, so far this season, Jonathan? I remember them beating Arsenal. You know, can they? Yeah, they're good under Marco Silva. I really like Marco Silva. He's done a wonderful job at Fulham. Would you back them to cause an upset this time?
Yeah, they absolutely could. I mean, I think Liverpool are in a very fragile place. I think there's no reason. I think Fulham still have to play City at home as well, don't they? So I think they could have quite a big say in this title race. They didn't play particularly well against Newcastle. Was that last week? Last home game, anyway. So I mean, whether you read much into that, I don't know. But yeah, their home form has been. I mean, I still find them a funny team. That I keep seeing them getting results, and as soon as I watch them, they're pretty average. So their home record is such that you think, they've absolutely have the chance to do something against both Liverpool and City, and they drew against Liverpool on the opening day last season. Is that right? I think
that was their first going back, because that was when I fell in love with João Paulinho.
Well, so they've proved before they can cope with Liverpool press and everything.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's have your score prediction then, Jonathan.
2-1 to Liverpool.
2-1 to Liverpool. George?
He's copied my notes. 2-1 Liverpool.
I've gone for 3-0 to Liverpool, apparently. So, yeah, Liverpool to bounce back in style and see me to the top of the predictions league. Let's hope. Right, before we finish, we did reference Coventry, Manchester United in the FA Cup semi-final, but we didn't play Manchester United shots bingo. And surely, even though it's Cov, George, we're still maybe looking at the 20s there.
Yeah, I think so. Especially, I mean, they're a relentlessly attacking side. So even if they are well beaten, I would be surprised they didn't offer a lot. The only way they probably don't have loads of shots if they go ahead early. 19 for me.
I'm going to go for 22. Jonathan?
18.
18. Manchester United shots.
This is only 90 minutes, right? This doesn't carry on into extra time.
Yeah, I won one a few weeks ago by the fact that it went into extra time, because you weren't here the week after. I think no one questioned it. We just went along with it, which was fine, because I was happy with that, because it meant that I looked clever. Right then, that'll do us for this week. Thanks ever so much for tuning in to Edge of the Box. Whether you've watched it or whether you've listened to it, thank you. There's a little peek of my Hoover behind me as well that I've left in the background of a room that I still need to sort out my office so that I get some stuff in the background. But yeah, if you could subscribe to the channel and do all the things that help the channel, whether you're listening via audio or video, that would be very, very helpful. Leave us some comments as well with whether you've enjoyed the podcast, and give the video or audio a like wherever you're taking in the show. We'll be back again next week to preview the Premier League action, as we always are. So yeah, have a great week leading up to the rest of the week leading to the weekend, and tell all your friends and family about the show.